for the hottest hitting show ever dedicated to the sport of mixed martial arts. They're hitting right where it hurts and choking out the competition. It's the Rear Naked Choke, coming at you live.
Thank you, Tim Hughes. Joe Rizzo here, bringing you MMA. Of course, because it's a Conor McGregor fight. We couldn't make a McGregor fight go by without bringing you what is now the 15th year of existence of Rear Naked Choke Radio. Follow us on Twitter at RNC Radio. We are RNC Radio on Facebook, where you can find this video. Yes, if you're just clicking your usual podcast links, guess what? Go to the Facebook group, Facebook page, whatever it is, and you'll be able to see video of this, and you're going to want to see it because I'm telling you, it's good. You could check out our YouTube channel for the video as well. We're going to start populating that thing. It hasn't been that populated over these years, but guess what? Year 15, never too late to start. So check that out. Subscribe to us as usual on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcasts. And while you're doing that and you're jumping around on your computers, hit fmsgraphics.com for all your printing and promotional needs, because they're the best and they're really fast. Today, our guest, well, we don't ever say today on this show, but it's Thursday, the 21st of January. You're probably not listening to it then because we're doing this late at night on the East Coast, and this is probably hitting your podcast apps on Friday or Saturday ahead of the McGregor fight. Nick Kalikas at Fight Odds on Twitter, Circa Sports in Las Vegas. He specializes in MMA. He's the one making these lines, and he's the Risk Supervisor, part of the Risk team. Basically, he's involved in the Risk room with everything except horses. So the people who are listening to me for horses, well, you're probably not listening to me for horses. Anyway, Nick, it's been a while, my friend. Thanks for jumping on with me here to talk McGregor and MMA and this big UFC card coming up.
I'd love to be here. Thank you for the invite, and congrats on 15 years, man. That's a long time. So congrats on that. Not a lot of people can say that.
Yeah, we go big or go home, and we knew that, like, if first show of 2020, we got to bring out one of the big guns, so we bring out Nick Kalikas, and it's so great. Like I you know what's a sign of the times is I'm watching the UFC broadcasts and I see, you know, your tweets pop up on the air about like the odds and I'm like, yeah, we've been talking about this for years before anybody was talking about it. Like we were, you know, you used to come on with us all the time. I mean, we've had so many discussions, and, you know, if you want to get, if you want to get, you know, into the rabbit hole, go back and search Nick Kalikas Rear Naked Choke Radio, and you'll find a lot of these old shows where we're talking about some of the crazy lines, like in some of these women's MMA fights, where the thing is, you know, the lines are, you know, minus 1900 for a Cyborg fight in Invicta, and, you know, you've helped us and our audience understand how a lot of these lines are made, but it never draws more attention, Nick, right, than when Conor McGregor is fighting. So first, let me ask you, when do you remember exactly when you posted the first line for this fight? It's got to be a while back, right?
I could double check here. Yeah, it was. It's been out for quite a while now. I will tell you here in a second, but I know what the opening line was, and it was minus 270. The comeback was plus 230. And let me tell you right now when it first opened. Line opened on November 10th. So November 10th, 2020. So it's been out, you know, a few months here or whatnot. And yeah, like I said, I opened at minus 270. And the thing is, at the time, I mean, these days, there's so many numbers that get floated around. You know, as soon as anything is rumored or any fight is kind of predetermined or whatnot, not officially announced by the UFC, there's still a lot of sports books out there now that are kind of jumping the gun. They can't wait to get that fight line out there. So right away, there's lines that start popping out. And I believe market wide, it opened around minus 165, minus 170. Man, you know, in this spot, I have a lot of respect for Dustin Poirier. He's such a great fighter, but I knew that price was way too short. So I opened at minus 270, and instantly we drew a lot of Poirier action, which we needed because you knew the McGregor money was eventually going to come. So thankfully, it worked out pretty well. And we're sitting at a decent spot right now at Circa.
So what I try to explain to people, like, you know, I have a long time background in sports writing, podcasting, whatever. And then, you know, a whole separate other career that I used to like actually make money. But what I've tried to explain, especially from the sports writing days, is an upset doesn't necessarily have to do with the skill of one person versus another person or one team versus another team. It actually has to do with what the Vegas odds are, because in people's minds, right, that's what's driving who is the favorite and who is the underdog. So regardless of what you think of the talent between Poirier versus McGregor, two guys who fought 6.5 years ago, and it went very heavily in McGregor's favor there. The fact that, McGregor probably against anybody, regardless of the skill level, is almost certainly going to be a favorite just because of his sheer popularity. And if he loses a fight like this, it's going to be considered an upset. When if you're, someone who really follows MMA, I mean, you wouldn't be surprised at all if Poirier won this fight, right? So is that, how many people that are putting money down on this understand that part of the principle?
Well, it depends. I think line value is everything, and where the line is, honestly, because I do believe that Conor McGregor is going to win this fight. I think stylistically, it's just a bad matchup for Poirier. Even though he's been great at lightweight, he's such a warrior. I mean, his durability has increased, his cardio conditioning. I mean, he's definitely a threat, and I think he has some advantages over McGregor in this fight for sure. So as the line gets higher, I think you have to approach it with caution, but anything under minus 200 or up to 250, 300, around that range, I think there is a little bit of value on McGregor. I think he's one of the best strikers that we've ever seen. So there is what you're saying definitely factored in that, because no matter what, his popularity is going to bring money to him, at the betting window for sure, because all these fans recognize that. But there are a lot of people that actually disrespect McGregor, and they think the hype isn't deserved. So they're automatically almost going to fade him too. We're starting to see more and more of that. The Mayweather loss, for example, that was in boxing, right? So you cannot even discount that or kind of, fault him for that loss. He's fighting the greatest boxer of all time. And, he probably did a lot better than everybody anticipated, to be honest with you, right? That said, the result was what it was. But I think all those fights that he's in a difficult spot, even the Khabib fight, a lot of people weren't really expecting us for him to get that W, right? I mean, the diehards knew that Khabib is just such a warrior. The stylistic matchup wasn't the greatest for Conor in that fight, so I think those losses, people are starting to believe that Conor's not as good as he is, or he's maybe overblown, and the UFC just kind of, the hype train kind of put him in that position. But the truth is, striking wise and stylistically, he is one of the best strikers that's ever graced the octagon. There's no doubt about that. So it's a combination of both, and you have to be careful with Conor McGregor lines, in my opinion.
What about the age factor? Now, this is one that I have looked at over and over and over in a lot of fights. And in this case, there's no age difference one way or another that's a factor between these guys. But when I look at McGregor, I see he's 32, and I see he's been in the octagon, basically once over the last 2.5 years, essentially at this point, right? So that one appearance was really impressive. I mean, he absolutely annihilated Cowboy Cerrone, and that was that was no surprise to me at all. I couldn't believe anybody liked Cerrone in that fight. This fight I think is completely different. I mean, I see that there's questions, when once to me, once a fighter hits past 31, now I'm really looking at that. I'm looking at I put it like this: you're at a carnival, right? And you have one of those wheels where you spin the wheel, and you put your little chip down on whatever it is, and there's 31 spots on the wheel, for, let's say, one for every day of the month. And once you start passing 31, there's a few ticks on that wheel that say, okay, if it comes up on this tick, you're just going to be a millisecond slower than you normally are. It's aging. It happens to everybody. Father Time's undefeated. And, at 28, Conor McGregor basically there's no chance or infinitesimal chance he's going to be a millisecond too slow. But at 32, maybe there's 5 of those ticks on that wheel. And if this happens to be one of those days, I mean, the first time I ever used that analogy was right before Anderson Silva lost to
Chris
Weidman. And I have not stopped patting myself on the back for that one so many years later.
I'm with you. That was a good call, man. Not many of us were on that side. I was on that side as well. So, but a lot of people thought we were crazy, right? Before the fight happened, to think that. But yeah, absolutely. And I can see what you're saying here. And that's definitely, there's something to that. Father Time is definitely undefeated. I mean, we just never know when a fighter is going to start showing that and obvious signs. Like if he comes in here I mean, this could be the fight that happens, and I wouldn't be that shocked, right? But on the other side of it, man, Poirier's taken a lot of damage. He's fought a lot more frequently, and I think the momentum has been great because the wins that he's had is just amazing, right? I mean, he's never been better in his career. There's no question about that. But I think the damage that he's kind of taking too might play a little bit of a toll. And Conor McGregor's a little bit more fresh because he's not taking that abuse. And I mean, even the McGregor versus Donald Cerrone fight, I mean, he was in there. It was so short. He didn't take any damage in that fight, right? So he's a very fresh Conor McGregor, but he is getting up there in age, like you said. And once you do start hitting that mark, and we don't know really what Conor McGregor is going to show up. So that is a risk for sure, especially laying that higher price in the minus 300s, you know, and on up. You got to be careful.
So to me, McGregor's game is, by the way, I agree with what you said. He really is. I think it's actually possible that he is underrated. Especially, I mean, as a striker, his precision and his ability to generate power from, you know, using the other person's movement and his own movement is almost unmatched, you know, possibly unmatched. But when I see a guy that relies on precision to generate his power, which I think he does, I'm a little more concerned with that, you know, ring rust, cage rust, whatever you want to call it. And that number ticking past, you know, like typical athletes, I would say their prime is usually from ages 27 to 31, probably a statistic that's most generated from the massive amounts of data in collected over baseball for, you know, so long for you know, literally over 100 years in a very data heavy data set type sport. And that's generally said that these athletes, you know, really are in their prime, male athletes from 27 to 31. He's out of that 31 window. Now, of course, we see athletes that extend that, you know, sometimes freakishly, right? Like GSP, even, you know, and Randy Couture, who was pretty much starting his career at that point. But, you know, who knows, again, who knows what the competition was like. I think Poirier is a very, very, very live dog here. I think he's got a couple of ways to win this fight. He's got the, you know, it's going to help a lot if McGregor's off by a millisecond. If he's off by a millisecond, I think that opens the door just enough for Poirier to do that. And I would like to see, again, the best way to beat McGregor, right, is take him down and, you know, make him use his arms, slow him down a little bit. Even if you get standing again, you know, he becomes a little bit less of a threat potentially as the rounds tend to go on. But I think Poirier is live, and, you know, the fact that, you set the line where it did, and then it moved to Poirier. We know that the late money, I mean, all the late money's got to go to McGregor all the time, right? Because of the big, you know, all the Irish people, like every Irish person, Irish American, Irish Canadian, like they're all flooding McGregor late, right? But what's it going to be like this year with no people really, like at a fight in Vegas where they'd be just dumping money on it, right? And this fight's nowhere near there. And I guess there are people in the casinos, but it's not like a regular fight, right? Like, how much is that going to hurt the handle?
It will definitely impact the handle quite a bit. But the truth is, I mean, the UFC handle has been outstanding. It's been great. So, I mean, imagine if the pandemic wasn't upon us right now. I think the numbers would be just ridiculous in a good way. So I agree with you. It's going to definitely impact it significantly, but I think we're still going to see a ton of action coming in. And this is the type of fight, you're right, the Irish money always comes in on McGregor. You have to factor that in. And that's one of the reasons, again, that we up it a little bit higher. But I think this is also the case where a lot of people do believe that Dustin Poirier, they're giving him respect. They don't trust Conor at this stage of his career. So we are seeing a lot of two-way action because the line is inflating a little bit, and a lot of people are coming in and putting a ton of money on the dog. So the parlays are kind of getting weighed out. A lot of people are putting Conor McGregor in parlays. With NFL teams, you know, we got the NFL playoffs going on right now as well, right? So give me the Chiefs and McGregor, give me and just everything. You know, a lot of people are kind of doing those type of parlays. So there is going to be quite a bit tied up across the board. So there's going to be plenty of money on this card. There's no doubt. And I'm glad Conor McGregor's, fighting this weekend, because shows like this are going to get more attention, which it deserves, right? Across the board. That's why we got to be thankful when he does compete. I mean, he's just truly a special athlete. There's not much more you could say. I mean, one of the most famous people in the world. I mean, there's no question about that either, right? And for all of us, it's good. I mean, we all benefit from him fighting, more attention for the sport, for the websites. I mean, obviously for the UFC, that's a good thing as well. So I think, for the sports books, more action comes in. So across the board, it's a win for everybody. So I love it when he fights, honestly.
Now, in this case, I would venture that Circa Sports probably would prefer a McGregor win. You guys would probably do a little bit better on a McGregor win. But how much of a difference is there really in this case? I mean, it's just a matter of, are you going to win or are you going to win bigger as at the casino?
Well, hopefully that's the goal. I mean, like, even if Dustin Poirier pulls off the upset, obviously the outweighing of the parlays, we should hopefully break even or maybe still profit a little bit. But if not, if Conor McGregor wins, obviously we're going to make more money because we are going to be heavier straight action wise on Dustin Poirier. So yeah, we're going to try. We're not going to go crazy here. I got to respect Dustin Poirier. There's no doubt about it. Again, there are those question marks with Conor McGregor, with him not fighting as consistently. We don't know if this fight's going to go to deep waters. If it does, I think the fight changes completely and you got to start leaning towards Dustin Poirier. I think that in the late rounds, he has the advantage. And obviously on the floor, like you said, with his wrestling, with his grappling, I think wrestling's interesting at this point of his career because I think McGregor's wrestling defense, at least, has gotten to the point where it's very difficult to take him down. Khabib definitely had success with it, but even he struggled at times in that fight. I mean, eventually he obviously does what he does best, but I don't think Poirier is going to be able to take him down and control him in the wrestling aspect. But if he's able to, then McGregor's going to be in some trouble because Poirier's jiu-jitsu is way ahead of McGregor on the ground. So I think that's a path to victory as well. Get him on the ground and, try to work your submission game if you can, or try to at least control him, like you said, wear him out, and then maybe try to finish him late because I don't see this fight going either way to the cards, meaning I really think McGregor could get rid of Poirier early. If not, I think Poirier will kind of weather that storm and probably finish McGregor in maybe round 4 or round 5 as it becomes a grueling type of fight. Because if Poirier's around in round 4, round 5, make no mistake, we know that McGregor's done some damage. Because you cannot be in there that long with that guy and not get hit a ton and take that kind of punishment, right? So it'll be a credit to Poirier if he makes it to round 4 with that, with that beast, because McGregor is, like you said, I mean, his accuracy, everything, he could be a little bit off here. We're not sure. We'll see how it plays out, but I think he is definitely a special type of striker. And if Poirier can withstand it, he could win late. That's what makes this fight interesting and intriguing. We're going to see a lot of people prop-wise, they're going to be betting all over the place. There's going to be a lot of people believing that Poirier can get it done late. We're going to see round 4, round 5 probably get bet quite a bit. We're already starting to see it, but, on fight day, it's going to be a different beast. There's going to be even that much more action. So, that kind of intriguing factors for sure.
So speaking of the prop lines, I would imagine the wins by submission for this fight are over 1,000. I mean, for McGregor, are you even booking that line?
Yeah, no doubt. Of course. In fact, I'll get our Circa Sports app. By the way, that's what you guys got to check out. You can, even if you're not in Las Vegas or Colorado, you can download the Circa Sports app and basically go to circasports.com and check it out. And you guys can kind of view our lines anywhere in the world.
When are you coming to New Jersey, man?
Hopefully soon, man. I mean, obviously that's not up to me. I'm not sure, like on the business end of it. I know they're trying their best to get it to as many places as they can. I mean, it's amazing because there's so much demand, which is really cool. We're doing really a good thing for Vegas. I mean, a lot of people are happy with Circa Sports, the way, the philosophy, the betting structure is. I mean, we're a unique sports book to say the least, and I think we're a fan-friendly or a better-friendly sports book to a lot of people out there, and they realize it. So they want us to be everywhere, and we're trying, hopefully, to get there as fast as we can and when we can. So I'm going to load up our props real quick here. So method of victory here for specifically the McGregor fight, right? We'll look that up by exactly where we are right now at this moment. 1 second. Okay, so McGregor by submission is currently, I mean, you're looking at 30-1 by McGregor, for McGregor by decision here. So it's quite a number. And I mean, I don't think McGregor, he's got one submission, I believe, right, in his career. Yeah, so, I mean, his jiu-jitsu game has improved, but that's not the way he's going to get it done. So, 30-1, I think we're safe there booking that number, honestly. I mean, I could see possibly maybe McGregor rocking him and maybe, hopping on his back and taking a choke or something like that. But I would see that to be kind of unlikely. I think he gets him out of there by knockout, if anything. And knockout for McGregor is currently minus 185. So, that's the chalky end of it. Yeah, pretty steep there.
What's the knockout? Knockout is always knockout and TKO, right?
Right. Yes, correct. It's KO, TKO, or DQ actually factored in there as well.
Oh, really?
In case there's a fluky DQ or something. I mean, that'll count as a knockout as well.
And what is it on Poirier?
Poirier plus 600. So you're getting 6-1 value, right, on Poirier by knockout there. By submission, plus 1250 right now. You know what I mean? So 12.5 to 1 or so. It's, maybe some value spots there. Like I said, prop shopping around these props. I mean, across the board, we have props available for every single fight on this card. So there's definitely some value out there. I mean, with our hold percentages too, I mean, we're offering like 15% hold on some of these method of victory props. So it's really not that high. So we're giving out outstanding value across the board on some of these props.
What about each fighter winning by decision?
Okay, we'll look that up here 1 second. Get back to it. It just clicked off. All right, by decision, we have right now Poirier by decision is plus 665. And McGregor by decision plus 635. So if it hits a scorecard, it's basically almost a coin flip type of fight, which I think it will be a very competitive type of fight. I wouldn't be surprised though. Honestly, out of the two, my money would probably go to Poirier. If I had to choose one of those, I think Poirier might edge out a decision, maybe 3-2. And if you're getting a little bit more plus money on that, I think that's probably the way to go if that's the case. But it's close. It'll be close.
Well, there's the McGregor Nate Diaz fight that went to that decision. That was like nobody thought that McGregor could go to the deep waters. They thought he'd gas out, whatever.
Yeah.
And he was brilliant from the opening bell to the end of that fight. So we know that he could do it. We know he's capable. It seems like there's definitely some real value. Like if you like Poirier, I mean, what the heck? You might as well just take him straight away and then take him, by either of the methods of victory, any of them, because you'll just be piling on at that point, right?
Well, you can also just get Poirier straight inside the distance as well, because we're one of the only sports books in Vegas that offer inside the distance. I think we might be the only one actually. So we do have, and they're better friendly props, right? I mean, fighter wins inside the distance, yes or no. And I mean, I think those are intriguing to bet because, I mean, you could definitely get some outstanding value. So it doesn't matter if it's a submission or a KO right now, plus 450 if Poirier wins inside the distance, period. So if Poirier wins, I mean, that's even better than betting him, obviously, at the underdog price. If you don't believe it hits the scorecards and Poirier wins and, plus 450, you can't beat that. And McGregor's about minus 200 regardless of what. So
wow.
Just a little bit more steep than the KO because you have to factor in maybe that flukish subs in there as well. So that price has to be a little bit bigger. But yeah, it's about 2-1 or so.
If Conor McGregor wins by submission, I'll go on record right now and I'll say the only way that he wins by submission is if he put $1 million bet on himself to win by submission and he knocks him down and slaps the rear naked choke on him. Right. Then you'll know. You'll be like, why didn't he just finish him? Yeah, because he dropped $1 million on himself at 30-1 to do it that way. So other than that, I think you're probably right. I think a fighter that gets paid as much as he does is probably not going to do that. He's not going to bother. If it was somebody else, and he kind of needed the money, he might bet it on himself and hit one of those props on himself. I guess that would be kind of funny.
Yeah, no doubt. And we do see fighters, I mean, of course, across the board, across market wide, you hear fighters betting on themselves all the time, right? Not just at Circa, everywhere, I mean, that is a thing. And, I don't blame them. You have to have confidence in yourself. So if you go out there, put a little bit of money on yourself and win the fight, a little bonus. But you're right. Conor McGregor doesn't really have to do that, obviously, with the kind of payday he's going to get here.
Yeah. I like the idea of, and this comes from maybe my horse racing chops a little bit. I like the idea of, taking my budget and saying, well, if I like Poirier and I think he's going to win outright, I might bet half of what I would have to begin with, and then take the other half and split it between him winning by, KO, TKO, or by submission or by points, divvy it up that way. So if one of those other ones hits, I win the main one and then I get a little extra juice and it's not going to, it's not really going to cost me anything. I think if I'm, running parlays, I'm probably, looking more at McGregor and seeing which the best value line is for him there. And I would say probably, the idea of betting him to win by KO knocks the odds a little bit further in my favor. So I'd be more inclined to do that. But I think it's just a great fight. I like that they put it back together. I think it's totally different from the last fight. It's at a different weight class than the first one. It's, one thing that really struck me, Nick, was Poirier said at the first fight, he said something, and I'm paraphrasing it a little bit, but essentially he said they were before the fight, they were getting ready to walk out, and McGregor just looked over at him and gave him like a smile and like almost like a genuine kind of smile, and he said he got in my head, and I couldn't get him out of my head, and I couldn't get myself untracked, and he's such a more mature fighter at this point. Like, look, if you look on their two records, they both have come back to win one fight, and their previous fight before that was they got dominated by Khabib. So
Right.
it's like dominated by Khabib, came back, beat somebody. In McGregor's case, it was Cowboy Cerrone. In Poirier's case, it was that great fight against Dan Hooker. And Poirier's been in action much more recently. He's fought during the pandemic. Conor hasn't. So
Yep.
I don't know.
They're
We'll see.
starting a family too now. We're seeing footage of his kids with him on Fight Island or whatnot, which is great. But again, becoming a dad, sometimes that impacts you in a positive way. It makes you, I think, it gives you more motivation, right? So I think it could be a positive, but at the same time, you're spending time with your family, maybe not getting in the gym as often. I mean, so there's good and bad, to those situations. But I do think Conor McGregor is a true professional as well. And I think when he's focused, I mean, it's scary because, when he said, I think read somewhere that he wants to fight like 7 times in the next year or so, or, year and a half or whatnot. I mean, obviously that's not going to happen. That's not very likely, but I mean, I'm glad he has that mentality at least to want to get in there and, fight as many times as he can or whatnot. So we'll see. I mean, I think he has to get as many fights in before like you said, he starts hitting, father time catches up to him to the point where he just doesn't have it anymore. Eventually all of them are going to get there. We see it time and time again.
Yeah. I think the fact that he's at 155 helps a little bit. If he was at 145, it would show probably quicker just because you drop these weight classes and the speed is just so evident, from these guys and these women as you drop weight classes. If you're really watching, you could see the speed differences. And, Frankie Edgar really started the trend of having, wasn't always the more athletic fighter. It just became for a while, the faster fighter had a way to figure out how to beat, maybe a better fighter or a bigger fighter. And, we've seen that happen so many times now. It's caught up a little bit, but, I can't say that Poirier is going to be faster than McGregor, but I don't know if it's going to be as appreciable as it was in the first fight. I tend to feel like it's not going to. I think maybe we could tie a bow on that one, and if you don't mind going over the rest of the main card, sure. And then if we see something on the undercard that looks really nice, maybe we can just talk about that for a little bit.
Absolutely.
So if you want to run down, it's Dan Hooker, aforementioned, against Michael Chandler,
man,
for another lightweight fight. Sometimes they like to call the fight before the main event the co-main event. This is not that. There's no co-main event when Conor McGregor is fighting. There's a main event, and then there's the rest of the main card.
Absolutely, but this could be a main event. This definitely could be a headliner fight. We know that. I mean, this is that kind of fight, right? So, but yeah, you're right. Conor McGregor is just at a different level. I mean, you can't even. Yeah. So I'm with you.
Yeah. So what are we looking at for Hooker versus Chandler here, odds wise at the moment?
As far as odds right now, we're looking at Circa. We have -125 for Hooker. The comeback on Chandler at +105. And this one, man, I mean, it opened, I think, market wide around a pick 'em, and it floated up to like -170 for Hooker. When it was at -170, honestly, we came out with -145. I wanted to keep the market lower. I think people are disrespecting Chandler a little bit. Look, I love Hooker. He's made me a ton of money recently as well. Obviously, I mean, I had a setback with him. I did bet him in the Poirier fight, and Poirier was able to, what a classic that was, to withstand and end up winning that fight. Credit to Poirier. But outside of that, he's been a money train. I mean, Hooker's been phenomenal. So I respect what he can do, and the finishing ability and his improvement. It's been amazing. I mean, I love that. When a fighter puts the work in and gets to the point where Hooker has, I mean, he deserves every bit of respect and being here, and getting the attention, below Conor McGregor. This is a big fight for these guys for sure. But on the other side of it, man, Michael Chandler at one point, in my opinion, was the best lightweight in the world. This is a few years back, when he was, I think, a little bit more in his prime. I think you could have made a case for him possibly being the best lightweight in the world. Now, I think he kind of lost some of that mystique. He hasn't been fighting, I think, up to form as what we're used to. But I think the hunger factor with him finally getting into the UFC and wanting to make it to the top again and proving that he is the best is possibly there. So you got to respect his hands. You got to respect that wrestling. And he's not a fish out of water with his submissions either, right? So he's got the ability to be very difficult in a tough fight for Hooker. So this is an awesome one right now. I think the line -125 +05 is a lot more accurate right now than it's been.
Yeah, Hooker probably got slept on a lot because he's got the 9 losses, right? And people immediately look at that and they say, okay, the guy's lost 9 times. I mean, his record's not that impressive. And, he ran off what, 1, 2, 3, 4. He won 7 out of 8, which helped make you money up until he lost that fight to Poirier, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So they're looking at his record and they're sleeping on the guy, but you got to look at the people that he fought and the people that he beat and then the people that he lost to, plus the improvement. He has a 4-year age advantage in his favor in this fight. He's fought, I mean, just names that are tried and true names. Ross Pearson, Jim Miller, Gilbert Burns.
That's a huge win. How big is that right now, right?
Yeah, massive. And he knocked him out.
Right. I mean, that was phenomenal.
Yeah. He lost to Edson Barbosa, but then he comes
back.
That
was a crazy fight too. Not to interrupt you, I'm sorry, but right? How insane was that fight? That was amazing. That was a great fight.
Yeah, that was crazy. And then he comes back off that fight. He beats James Vick, Al Iaquinta, and Paul Felder. I mean, it's not exactly a murderer's row, but those guys are like better than gatekeepers, right?
Oh, for sure.
Chandler, and listen, I used to go to like every Bellator that was within driving distance, and they were so great to this show. I mean, we did so many shows, cage side and had full access, and Bjorn Rebney used to come sit down with us all the time. And I saw Chandler fight over and over. I saw the rise from, who's this guy, and Chandler Alvarez. Those fights were unbelievable. He's 34 now, but what we've seen is his last 3 fights have been first round finishes. He lost to Patricio Pitbull. He knocked out Sidney Outlaw, and then he beat Benson Henderson, and he knocked him out in August in his last Bellator fight. So that's kind of that's a good note to come into the UFC on. But again, it's like 34. Like he was the Bellator, face for years, and it's just going to be so strange for me to see Michael Chandler in the octagon. Like,
it is.
I don't know if I'm ready for that, Nick. I don't know if I'm ready.
It is very strange. I mean, I honestly wish we would have got the prime Chandler, like when those Eddie Alvarez fights. I mean, Eddie Alvarez and Chandler, when they were Bellator, when they had that rivalry going, both of those guys were elite level lightweights. I mean, Eddie Alvarez was one of the best lightweights in the world for a long time as well, right? He was an elite fighter. And then Chandler just being his rival and getting to that point and having that, the ability to beat him. I mean, it was just phenomenal, So that rivalry right there, I think that was when Chandler was definitely at his best. But you're right. I mean, now it's been some time, and I think he's had a little bit of ups and downs. But, man, you never know. He's a freakish athlete too, right? I mean, so like you said, we've seen it in the past, especially with wrestlers. I mean, that have been able to sustain the longevity of their careers. You look at Randy Couture, you look at Dan Henderson. I mean, you look at some of these guys that they have been able to – I don't know. I'm not saying Chandler's in that, kind of – lineage or whatever, but he has the ability to possibly get back towards the top, and stylistically, like I said, he's a tough matchup, but I do think the durability of Hooker overall, I mean, the guy's a warrior. He's like a zombie out there at times, right? Which is good and bad. I mean, he takes so much punishment. He's able to take it, and he, somehow he survives these crazy wars for the most part. And he comes back and he's still dangerous. So I think the durability factor at this point definitely belongs to Hooker. But I do think that Chandler could possibly get in there and do some good things, outpoint him, maybe get some takedowns and make this a difficult fight. So I'm going back and forth on this fight. So as a plus money, I think rises on Chandler, you have to look towards him. If the fight drops down to maybe a pick 'em exactly, then you have to maybe look towards Hooker for sure.
Yeah, what I do like about Chandler is the way that he performed in his Bellator fights against Benson Henderson. And I know they were roughly 4 years apart. He beat him. They had a split decision in 2016, and then he beat him again and just like we said a few months ago over the summer. I mean, we know he was a UFC champion, right? And Eddie Alvarez, same thing. Like 7 years ago was their last fight, but he beat him. He beat the 2011 version of Eddie Alvarez when he was definitely, a big underdog in that fight,
right?
And arrived on the scene. So he's and the wrestling pedigree really is unbelievable from University of Missouri. Like that doesn't, I don't think that just goes away. This is a really good fight. I mean, I'll be disappointed if it's not.
Yeah.
I just feel like there's a finish in this fight somewhere. I don't know how, I don't know where, but maybe this is one of the ones that I just bet, the fight finishes inside the distance.
Yeah.
I might take that. I might take that one up once you get Circa in New Jersey to get on that. I love the women's flyweight fight between Jessica Ai and JoJo Calderwood.
That's a tough one too. That's a difficult one.
I'm sure Jessica Ai is being overlooked very much in this fight. I think a lot of people. I think she's a little bit of a polarizing figure, right? Like, I mean, people seem to get way more opinionated about her than probably you would expect for somebody, who's had, a solid career, nondescript. But again, with a lot of the female fighters, Nick, that have been around for a long time, they get turned off by the record. They see 15-8, but she fights everybody. She's never has there's never an easy fight for Jessica Ai. I mean, she had a losing streak in there, but I mean,
some of those are controversial though, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, she loses to Miesha Tate, Juliana Pena, Sarah McMahon, and Betch Correia. Like, really, and she's fighting a weight class above really what she probably should at that point. They see Jessica Ai and they think of her getting knocked out by Valentina Shevchenko. That's the only time she's been knocked out in her career. So what do you got for Calderwood and Ai in this one?
Ai is the underdog, but it's again close to a pick'em type of fight though. -120 even money, and we're getting a ton of two-way action on this fight. I mean, Jessica is getting some support because the bettors aren't stupid out there. The ones that watch the sport and want to make some money, they realize Jessica Ai as an underdog is intriguing. But I think that's the way you got to bet this fight. It's underdog either way. So if the line flipped, and Jessica became the favorite, this is going to be a very competitive split decision type of fight to me as well, right? I think both of these girls are just going to be in there giving it all they have, and it's going to kind of be back and forth. I could see both getting top position on the ground a little bit. I do think that Jessica Ai is going to come in here utilizing her wrestling a little bit and trying to be offensively, get those takedowns and try to avoid getting submitted or whatnot, and kind of controlling and winning the fight that way. So dog or pass, maybe a slight lean towards Jessica Ai, but Calderwood's going to be game. And the disappointment for me is, in Jessica's last fight, I know, she might not have been 100% physically, but I was expecting her to perform a little bit better against Calvillo there in that fight. And then against Calderwood with Maya, Maya's a great fighter. She proved that even more so, I think, at the Shevchenko fight, right? But, that was a surprising kind of letdown. Calderwood was in line to get that title shot, and Maya came in there and just, stole it from her basically. So that was a disappointment. That was a letdown in, I think, in the spotlight where she could have really excelled and got herself some more hype and, potential shot, obviously, for Shevchenko at that time. So they've kind of both had ups and downs, and they've been a little bit inconsistent for me to even kind of trust either one of them at a favorite price. So I could not lay -120 on Calderwood. I would have to look at Jessica Ai if I was going to bet this fight. But like I said, if the line happened to flip, then I would probably look the other way and maybe take a stab at Calderwood there at that point.
What's interesting, I think, is if you look at Calderwood, she's now and again, she gets a little sloppy on the ground. And I don't mean sloppy with technique. I mean sloppy with concentration. It cost her against, and I remember these fights the way they happened. Marina Moros subbed her with the armbar. It was like she just left it right out there for her, right? The guillotine against Jessica Andrade, it was the same. It was like the same thing. And then the last fight against Jennifer Maia, it was almost like the same thing at the same time, right? It's like she has these like a momentary lapse, and at the highest level in the UFC, like you just can't afford to do that because these animals will just tear you up if you give them that tiny little opening. It probably favors her a little bit more that this is more likely to be a stand-up fight. But I agree with you that if Ai works to try to take this fight to the ground and at least make Calderwood respect the takedowns, I think she's got a very good chance of winning this fight. Plus, everything Cleveland these days seems to be coming up better than it has in past years. And I know that's making you smile, buddy.
Yes, sir. Of course. Yeah. And that's the thing. It's hard to pick, I don't think I've ever picked against Jessica. If I have, maybe it's been maybe once or so. Well, Shevchenko probably in that fight, obviously. But other than that, I got to support, Jessica. So I'm a little biased with Ohio fighters or whatnot. So I hope she has a good career. Like you said, she's been underrated, man. Look at the people she's fought. I think she's been, at the top of the game for a long time. So you have to respect her. And again, the other side of it too, Calderwood, similar, both of them, a ton of respect. We know they're going to go in there and they're going to fight. And it's going to be pretty fun, I think.
Yeah, I mean, she's definitely has to watch the kicks from Calderwood, because she's very dangerous there.
Yeah.
But I mean, she could definitely stand. She's, I probably has more power than Calderwood. Calderwood's probably a little more on the accuracy and length. It does look pretty even to me.
Yeah.
I would not be surprised though if it did slip a little bit more toward Calderwood as the fight is starting to go, because of the Scotch and Irish thing. All the McGregor people are,
Yes.
I don't know, unless either that or they're just going to hate on Calderwood, the Irish people.
No, I think that there might be that kind of, like I said, that unfair bias against Jessica Eye, though, that does come in. Like on fight day, the fans are like, Jessica Eye, it's kind of a love or hate Jessica Eye. She has the following that she does have is a loyal following. They love her, right? But the other side of that is, the people that are just totally against her or whatever. So I think we could see a lot of people just kind of trying to fade her in this fight, not giving her enough respect, and the line might climb a little bit more towards Calderwood as well in that regard. So it's going to be interesting to see where it closes. But make no mistake, it's going to be a competitive fight, I think.
Yeah. So the other two fights that we have on the main card here are Matt Frevola and Otman Azadiar, and Marina Rodriguez and Amanda Ribas. I mean, these are not, like the first few names we mentioned are more household. These are, like if any of those fights were flipped to the prelim card, I mean, I wouldn't have been surprised. I'm surprised actually that the Rodriguez-Ribas fight is there, and the Juliana Pena-Sarah McMahon fight is the one that's on the prelim card, because I feel like at least those are two more known names and known entities. What else are you seeing on these cards? Do we have any really lopsided lines here? Looking down the rest of it.
That's bothering me, or that's kind of bothered me a little bit, was Sarukian versus Hakparist a little bit. Look, I love both these guys. I think they're two of the best lightweight up-and-coming fighters we have in the sport right now. I mean, they're both, 24 and 25 years old. The skill level's there. They both continue to improve. I mean, Sarukian, in my opinion, the combination of his wrestling, his grappling ability, and he's getting better. The speed, the technical skill he has on the feet is something to watch out for. I think this guy could be a future champion. That's how good this guy could really be. But he's got a tough test in front of him. Hakparist's wrestling is getting better and better. And the stand-up game, obviously, he's got a ton of power, and he can be very effective on the feet. So for me, I like Sarukian. I think he's one of my favorite prospects in the lightweight division. And anything under 200 I was betting, I already got on him a little bit because the price did open under 200, but now it's getting close to 300, and I'm starting to scratch my head, and I'm concerned because the line's getting a little bit out of hand here as it climbs to 300, and I think Hakparist is definitely going to put on a better performance than the current line indicates. So I think at this point it might be a dog or pass situation, and sometimes I know this is crazy, but in my game, as far as betting MMA for a long time now, I mean, there's more than likely I beat the betting line, in the fights that I bet, win or lose. I mean, I get ahead of the line, and I get a good price and a good number. But when a line kind of shoots up like that, I don't like it too much. I know a lot of people love closing line value, but to me, that kind of scares me. When you're seeing the line just kind of skyrocket and everybody kind of jumping on the train and agreeing with you. I know sharp money does move the line, so there's a lot of sharp opinion on that. But there's also a lot of square and public opinion factored in there as well. So that kind of worries me a bit. I think it's going to be a lot better. So that's a fight that I've kind of had on my radar since it's been announced a little bit. And it could definitely be a main card fight as well. I know it's a headliner for the prelims sort of thing right now, and it deserves to be that as well. So there's going to be a lot of eyeballs on this fight at least.
What can we expect, do you think, from Brad Tavares against Antonio Carlos Jr.?
I don't know. I mean, stylistically, this could be a very good fight for Tavares, right? I mean, he's got good takedown defense, and he should have the better hands and better boxing here. But Carlos Jr. continues to improve his skills. I think he's kind of obviously the more durable fighter of the two. I know both of these guys have been, finishing their careers or whatnot. But I think Carlos Jr., you mix in the jiu-jitsu game with, I think he's still in MMA years. He's got that youthful edge over Tavares, and he continues to improve. So I could see Junior being a live dog against Tavares here in this spot, to be honest with you. I'm just not, Tavares not fighting as consistently as we like, obviously, but at the same time, it might be good for him to kind of recover because I know he's had some durability issues throughout his career, but he's a good fighter, and he's also been underrated. So for me, it's kind of another tough one, but I think it's a dog or pass. If you're going to bet this fight, I think you have to look more towards Carlos Jr. here because I think he could probably get it done.
Yeah, and neither guy has fought much, but neither guy's won since 2018. It's kind of, it's only a 2-loss streak for both guys. But I mean, even Tavares, one of those losses was to Israel Adesanya.
Yeah, I know. And
Like
he didn't get knocked out. He didn't get finished in that fight,
I
right?
know, I
So that
know.
says something. That was
And that was
impressive
and it was a 5-round fight. It was a
Yeah,
5-round fight, and he went the distance with him. Not so good against Shabazian the next time out, which was already, I mean, November 2019. I mean, it's like, yeah, I mean, how much has the world changed since that fight?
Right. That's very true. Yeah, there's no doubt about it.
A lot. And okay, so we got,
and it's basically it's a pick'em type of fight. I forgot to mention the line, but right now it's Tavares minus 120, Carlos Jr. even money. It was a little bit higher for Tavares, but again, sharp action is agreeing with Carlos Jr. here a little bit more so. So we're respecting the sharp action coming in at Circa on Jr. a little bit, and you have to kind of again side with it a little bit. So hopefully we get enough action back on Tavares, which I think we will. Obviously, that it kind of balances us out at least in this spot. But right now we kind of need Tavares because we did have more sharp action on Carlos Jr.
What about, let's wrap it up. We'll just talk about Juliana Pena against Sarah McMahon, since, we always have to cover the female fights, since this was like the first MMA podcast that was talking about female fighters before anybody knew who the heck they are. That's why I could still call WWE champ Shayna Baszler my friend so many years later. So, if I need clicks and downloads, I call her.
There you go. That's McMahon Baszler again, a pioneer MMA, women's MMA. I'm so happy for her success. Really, it's awesome to see. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, she's awesome. So what do we have? What's the line for Pena against McMahon?
This is another close one. You're not going to be surprised, right? I mean, at this point of their career, both awesome fighters. I mean, two of the best in the weight class as well. So right now it's McMahon minus 130, Pena's plus 110. So another tough one. I think. Look, McMahon is getting up there in age, right? I mean, we have to say that she's still performing at a high level, though. And I think I was expecting her to honestly maybe wear that strap in the UFC one day. With her skill set, so she's kind of, she hasn't got to where I expect her to be. Pena was right there as well, though. So this is another tough one. I think these ladies are definitely going to be back and forth. But obviously, I think the line is about right here, too. A slight edge towards McMahon in this fight. As the price increases, I think you got to look towards Pena, though. I mean, Pena is going to be a very tough fight here.
Yeah, this is a really tough fight. Sarah McMahon's 40 now, believe it or not. But she's another one. Like we were talking about those wrestling freaks. She's a wrestling freak, man. She's an Olympic medalist, in wrestling. And, she looks pretty much still exactly the way she looked when she was wrestling. Like she's just in unbelievable shape. What I try to do in a fight like this is such a tough fight, Nick, for this reason for me. One of my angles in betting that I've completely stolen from horse racing is how does a fighter do when they go up in class? And so many times you could see, if you just look at the records, you could see, okay, this fighter, when they're fighting somebody that's a tier below the top, they always win. And then they get to that top level and they come so close, but they never get over the top. Tony Ferguson, perfect example. Tony Ferguson goes up in class and you're like, the guy looks unbeatable. And then he goes up in class and something happens and he just comes up a little short. These fighters are both exactly the same. They go a little bit up in class and they just, something happens. They just don't get it done.
And you're getting submitted by GDR last time. I mean, that was crazy, right? Who expected that submission loss in that spot? But yeah, you're right. I mean, she was doing better too. She was, coming alive, doing well. But yeah, you're right. That was another what you're talking about right now.
Yeah, I mean, and she got beat by Shevchenko again. Big deal. It's not a big deal to get beaten by Valentina Shevchenko. Everybody does, except for Amanda Nunes, right? Exactly. But she beats, then she beats Nico Montano. She beats Kat Zingano. She beats Jessica Ai, right? Dudieva, Rakosi. And, that's where you're at with Pena. McMahon, though, at least you could see, if you want to take that angle, she does have later in her career, like early in her career, her losses were to the then unstoppable Ronda Rousey version.
Yeah.
The Miesha Tate, champion level Miesha Tate, and the just about to start a streak where she was never going to lose again until we're all dead, Amanda Nunes. But now you get to 2017, she loses to Vieira, she loses to Renault, and those fighters are not on that top tier. So if Pena's a little bit of an underdog, I'm liking that. She's just been fighting a higher class of fighter as well, so she might feel like she's getting a little bit of a break here. And I just wonder if this fight, like her fights have, she's had a little bit more of a tendency than most to have her fights finish before time. In fact, both of these fighters have.
Right.
So, and I know that in the female fights in general, as we've talked about many years before, those tend to have less favorable odds for the better. You know, if you, in other words, most of these fights are favored to go the distance. So if you're looking for some value, you could find, you know, pick the winner of this fight and then pick them to win within the distance, and you probably have a good shot at making some money in there. Would you say that's a good angle?
That is a very good angle, especially in this fight, because I mean, automatically, I think a lot of people see a woman's fight in the total. The round totals are always ridiculous, right? It's like 2.5 over minus 400-ish, or, you know, minus 350, 400. This is not one of those fights. In fact, I mean, I'll look at the line right now, and the total is 2.5 over 220s, like 225 right now. So, I mean, it's not in the 300 range. It's still high. And I think there still could be some value on the under, or like you said, inside the distance props, because, you know, Pena could definitely maybe get a sub, right? She can win this fight on the ground. She gets position. I think McMahon has nasty ground and pound. She has submission games. That's the thing. They can both submit each other. I mean, McMahon is that wrestler, but she has that strength with not bad technique for jiu-jitsu. I mean, but that strength that she has, once she gets around your neck, you're in some serious trouble. I mean, you know, there's not much you can do about that when she has that arm triangle locked in, or she has a guillotine locked in or something like that. But Pena again. So I could see the finish there. I think both of these ladies hit extremely hard too. Like, I mean, if you look at McMahon, when she's landing some of her punches, she absorbs a lot, but she can hit hard, you know, and I think Pena's starting to deliver harder punches as well. So they're going to both eat a lot of punches on the feet, maybe get a little hurt, and maybe they could jump on a sub. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is a case where we see a ladies fight finishing inside the distance either way. Yep.
Yeah. Well, the Sarah McMahon record indicates a very weird streak of 4 fights that all ended by arm triangle, and she won the first 2 of them and she lost the last 2. Like, that almost sounds like those were like a self-fulfilling prophecy. This fight is going to end in an arm triangle.
Unbelievable.
And then it's 4 in a row. That was crazy. And that ended when McMahon beat Lena Landsberg from Sweden back in, it's going to be almost a year to the day since she's been in there. And then she didn't fight in 2019 either. So, you know, you're talking about McMahon at 40 getting into the octagon for the, you know, the first time since that milestone birthday, and only for the second time in, you know, basically 3 years at that point. So I think if that's close to even, and if you're getting a little juice on Pena, that's probably a really good angle, really good bet.
Yeah. Dogger pass. Yeah, I agree.
Let's switch gears a little bit if you still got a few minutes for us.
Absolutely.
One of the things that have evolved in the gambling world, not just in MMA, but along in the gambling world, especially since we've been able to move to online stuff and less of the in-person stuff that's necessary, is the advent of in-game wagering and in-fight wagering, I guess, you know, you'd call it. And I remember you and I talked offline about the time of the World Series for my other podcast, Diamond Diehards. That's a plug, at Diamond Diehards. Go follow it. That you were helping or doing the lines, the in-game lines for the World Series, the Dodgers-Rays World Series. How much in-game has the in-game stuff really changed the game for you? I mean, you have to be watching these fights like crazy. And, you know, like what's the advent of it? Like, how quick are you changing these lines? Like, you know, just give us a little insight into that.
I love it. In-game is so fun to book. You know what I mean? I enjoy that. Probably that's one of my favorite things to do as far as the booking end and the risk management side of it. I mean, I'm fortunate enough. I get to book NFL in-game live. You know what I mean? We do that, for these big NFL playoff games as well. Baseball games, like you said, the World Series, fighting. They are only available between like commercial breaks for the big games, right? So we're not going the whole way through during the game, but we do have the lines available. So we are adjusting the lines according on commercial breaks, what's going on during the game. And booking the action. It's getting extremely popular. I mean, we're getting a decent handle, especially with these NFL games, or like you said, the World Series. It's crazy the amount of action that people are getting down in game. It's just every year it's going to continue to grow, and it's going to be huge. I mean, there's no question about it. The more in game, really, the better. And it's going to be a different aspect. It's going to be a different animal in a few years. I think you're going to see more and more across the board in every sport, really. If there's in game, a possibility to do in game, I think we'll see it happen.
Well, so give us a little insight into what your day is going to be like during this UFC card that's coming up here. The one we're talking about here, UFC 257. So you're starting off on the prelim, and you're watching these fights as they go along, and Albazi against Zumagulov. You're like, okay, Albazi wins the first round pretty handily, and now you're just completely adjusting the odds, right?
Right. Well, yeah. And the prelim fights, we're not putting odds on some of these prelim fights yet, because again, we're one of the only books in Vegas to even offer in-game betting on UFC fights. So that's another reason to check us out at Circa in Vegas for sure, because, like I said, we're offering a lot more than a lot of people in Vegas do not have. So that's awesome, right? But yeah, we're not doing every fight yet. I mean, that again will come down the road as well, but we're, kind of taking baby steps right now going in that direction. But in a fight like that, yeah, definitely. If you're seeing, and that's a pick'em type of fight as well. I mean, right now we're seeing Zumagulov at minus 115, Albazi on the other side of it at minus 105. So in that case, if Albazi comes in and steals round one, now you have to factor in a lot of things here. I mean, conditioning is a big thing. So how many times have we seen a fighter go out there and win round one, but then not win round two or round three, fade to the point where they're just a different fighter after they get through that first round, right? So you have to kind of look at it. Each fight's a little bit differently on how you book it. But if both these guys are fairly decent condition, I'm not worried about Albazi or Zumagulov gassing. So in a fight like that, I would probably shift the odds to about $170, $180, just off the top of my head. If he does win the first round, I think it would be around that spot. So again, I think it's using a little bit of common sense. And then if there is action coming in on a certain fighter, you have to use what kind of action that you're getting kind of determines what kind of move you're going to make. If it's a sharp action, if it's sharp account coming in, then you're probably going to move that line a little bit stronger in the end game, right? If it's just kind of some public general action, you're not going to move it as much, but you're probably going to have a tendency to move more on action period during in game, because again, you're kind of limited with that window. You're only available during commercial breaks. So you have, a smaller window for people to get their action in. So, I mean, you just have to kind of play the game in that regard. You have to use common sense and try to definitely be sharp about the stylistic matchup and how the fight should play out, and then kind of adapt real time and just do your best to book the action. But it is a lot of fun, man.
I can imagine what it's going to be like during this McGregor-Poirier fight. If in the first round, Poirier just blitzes him, right? Then you're going to see probably as soon as you open the line, it's going to be a quick flood to Poirier. Then everybody's going to be like, oh, wait, McGregor's going to come back, and I can get him at, I had to get him at minus 280 before the fight, but I can get him at plus 150 right now. I'm just going to dump it in on him, right?
Oh, no doubt.
Yeah.
People will too. They'll unload. Yeah, for sure. They'll come in, or you might have some people thinking, "Oh, McGregor's done," and jumping on the chalk too. So it depends. I think there's still a lot of fan bias that goes into the end game as well, right? With that, a lot of people don't bet with their minds; they bet with their hearts. You know what I mean? A lot of public out there, they come in and they're going to bet back their fighter no matter what. I think like sports teams in football. Hey, I do that myself. I mean, I'm a Bengals fan, so hey, this year though they didn't let me down against the spread. They came through quite a few times when Burrow was obviously, healthy. Unfortunately, that wasn't a great scenario towards the end of the season there. But that being said, so I'm like that as well. I want to back my teams a little bit, watch them have some action on it. I think there's a lot of fight fans that kind of do that with their fighters as well, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, especially McGregor, right? He's got to be the top one, because there's so many people that, it's not just Irish people. I mean, he's appealing to so many, and he's polarizing to others. Like they'll be likely to be like, I hate that guy. I'm just going to bet. I don't even care who he's fighting. I'm just going to bet the other guy because I want to see him lose.
Yes.
Or then there's the other people who are like, well, I love McGregor, but I'm going to bet Poirier because if McGregor loses, well, then at least I get some money back for it. That's
Right.
like that's my neighbor. He's a big Chiefs fan. He always bets against the Chiefs every week. He's like, last week, he's like, yeah, I'm dumping a bunch of money on the Browns. I'm like, why? He goes, well, because the Chiefs stink. But I know
Wow.
exactly why he's doing it.
Yeah.
And
He covered,
he
right?
got the best of both worlds last week.
Right.
Yeah.
He did. The Chiefs
Yeah.
won and he covered the spread. Yeah,
Chiefs won.
exactly.
He covered
So,
the spread, and it looks like their superstar Mahomes is going to play.
right.
So what's
Yep.
the big? Let's see. I guess I got to put myself on the record here and say that if I was making a few picks, I would. I just like to pick underdogs. People like to bet favorites. I'm the other way. I don't like doing the chalk if I could avoid it. I'm usually just looking for the underdogs here. I would throw Poirier in that group. Definitely Juliana Pena, and I'm still a little bit torn on I versus Calderwood. I don't know if I'd put that in there, but and I'd have to look at Hooker versus Chandler a little bit more to see if there was like significant movement one way. If it moved one way or the other significantly, I probably would just go for the underdog and just take whoever is the underdog there. So,
Right.
but for the main thing, I'll say Poirier and Pena, and I would probably parlay them too, just to see if I could
That'd be a
jack
big
up
payday, yeah.
jack up my winnings a little bit, and maybe do some of that funky stuff with the fight ending early, jack up the odds a little bit. It's a lot of fun. It really is. I can't wait till you guys get into New Jersey so I can get your app and start take my money, Nick. Please take my money. Circa Sports.
Hey, like I said, I can't wait for us to keep on expanding and people to get to see like what Circa Sports is about. I'm not just. I know it sounds kind of I don't want to say cliche or corny or whatever because we're plugging Circa, but I'm telling you, man, if you don't have an account, if you're able to bet at Circa, you don't have an account, you're missing out big time. I mean, there's no question with the fair limits, with our splits across the board, you got to have an account.
And right now in Nevada and Colorado, right?
Yes, Nevada and Colorado only right now, unfortunately. But again, you can download the app though in any state. You just can't fund it unless you're in Nevada or Colorado.
And you're not restricting views. You just restrict funding from
right.
out
Yeah.
of state.
And again, it's not. Obviously, if it's up to Circa, then the funding would be available widely everywhere. It's just there's certain laws and regulations they have to abide by, so that's why. But yeah, there's no restricted views, so you can log in. It doesn't cost you anything, to download the app and just kind of check out all the lines, whether it's NFL playoff games and all the props we offer for this weekend's action, and then the UFC as well. It's kind of cool. I mean, like I said, even if you're not betting, I mean, I urge people to seriously just get on the app and just kind of follow along with the odds. And the in-game will be available as well. You could just refresh the app during the in-game and you can see the in-game prices. Which is pretty cool because, again, there's not a lot of Vegas lines outside of Vegas where you can actually access and see what the real Vegas line. There's different websites that you can display some of the offshore numbers that you're seeing out there, but not really so much in Vegas. So I think it's really cool to have the Circa app and kind of see where the market is.
Yeah, that's a big issue. Even in New Jersey, there's some sites that they won't even let you go to the sites. I'm like, what is that? I'm like, it's just data. It's just information.
Right.
Like it's a little, and we're one of the legal states. Hopefully the rules keep working in our favor.
I think it'll get better. I mean, I'm being hopeful across, the United States in general. I think everything continues to get better. I'm just glad that sports betting's finally getting the opportunity and getting that respect because we've seen what, look at the handle New Jersey's doing. I mean, on a monthly basis still. And again, we're in a pandemic. Just imagine what the numbers would be if we were not. So, I mean, Jersey has done really well. It's outstanding to see the expansion of sports betting, across the United States. We're starting to see, sports books show up in these NFL stadiums or baseball stadiums, or, we're going to see a lot of that. I think Wrigley Field, I just saw Wrigley Sportsbook or something is coming out. You know what I mean? They're going to have in development or in the works or something of that nature as well. So that's pretty cool, man. We're going to see, like I said, sports betting just continue to evolve into a different beast. I mean, this is only the beginning of it, but I'm glad. Like, I know that's crazy to say, right? Because it's been around for so long, but I'm talking about as far as I think the public eye and the attention that these last couple of years that we're starting to get with sports betting. I think this is just kind of a new generation and a kind of a new start for the industry, so to speak.
Yeah, there's just not the same stigma that there was because it's all legal, it's all above board,
right?
And the other thing I think that makes it, an easier deal to swallow is the players in these sports I mean, okay, MMA is maybe not the best example, but in the major sports, they make so much money that for them to be on the take in these games there would have to be you can't, they make
Yeah.
more money just from playing the games, right?
Right.
And even with the, the officials and everything like that, there's so much vetting. It would be so hard to just, as soon as there's so many ways to capture red flags.
There
And
is,
if
yes.
anything comes up, it's so easy just from algorithms and things, just looking at pure data. There's so many things that just trigger red flags, and phone calls get made really quick. I mean, we saw what happened in the NBA a few years ago with Tim Donaghy. I mean, he 30 years before that, he probably wouldn't have been caught. This day and age, he got caught.
Absolutely.
So it's there's no more integrity issues there. I don't think so, and certainly there haven't been from my standpoint. Where I'm looking at things for a million years that I've been involved doing all this stuff. All right, he is Nick Kalikas. You can follow him on Twitter at Fight Odds. He gave you all the stuff about Circa Sports. If you're in Nevada or Colorado, you can download and fund the app and start your wagering immediately. And if you're not in any of those states, you could still download the app and check out the odds as they are pregame and in-game, which is where this whole thing is going. So check him out there. And we appreciate him taking the time in our 15th year now of Rear Naked Choke Radio. We want you to follow the show at RNC Radio on Twitter. You can follow me, Joe Rizzo, at Rear Naked Choke, all one word, no underscores, the original. It's there on Twitter. And if you want to follow the show on Facebook, check it out, facebook.com/Rear Naked Choke. Yeah, it's that easy. Check out YouTube. You're checking out videos now. This is a video. If this is hitting your phone and you're saying, well, this is how I've listened to it for 15 years or 8 years or 2 years. Well, guess what? Now you can watch it. And we could bother you in the background when you have it up on your screen. You could watch Rear Naked Choke Radio on YouTube, Facebook, and a few other places that I'll probably throw it up, like Twitch and I don't know, maybe even LinkedIn, who knows. So that will do it for Nick Kalikas. This is Joe Rizzo. Thanks for listening to Rear Naked Choke Radio.